Well, I'm John Milligan, a member of Larkhall Heritage Group, Larkhall Heritage Society. We have been doing local historical research for the last 35 years, and myself, I've been doing some local history research since 1968. Larkhall itself has 12,000 years of history, but I'm not going to speak to you tonight to fill in 12,000 years. What I am going to do tonight is to concentrate on two aspects that made Larkhall, Lanarkshire, the town that it is today. We're going to have a look at the mining history, in particular the coal mining history, and also we're going to have a look at the history of the railway development. These two aspects of Larkhall history are important in that they worked together. Without the coal, you wouldn't have had the railways. Without the railways, the coal would have stayed in the ground. Tonight, we're going to have a look, not at all of Larkhall history as I mentioned, but on these two aspects. 1745 was the Battle of Preston Pans. What's that got to do with Larkhall, its railways and its coal? Well, there is a connection. In that battle, the Highland regiments attacked the other lot, as I like to call them. Johnny Cope, Are You Walking Yet, was attacked by the Highlanders at Preston Pans. They followed the line of a wagon way from the Preston Pans coal pits that went down to the salt pans on the North Sea coast. This is the first example that we have of railways or wagonways actually being mentioned in battle. Larkhall itself also had its wagonways. It had its horse-drawn tramways and wagonways, and of course later its railways. And none of these would have come about if it hadn't been, of course, for the abundance of coal, sandstone, limestone, ironstone, ganister, which is a type of very, very hard sandstone used for the lining of furnaces. Larkhall and district certainly had a lot of these in abundance. To get the coal out was one thing. To transport it was quite another. And one thing that we did have plenty of in Victorian times was the manpower to push and shove the coals and the coal wagons from A to B. Eventually horses took over the job of women pushing these wagons of coal, and later of course we had the steam railways coming along and doing so much more work. And also, while this was taking place, the coal mines themselves, rather than just being 50 or 60 feet deep with ladders going down them, we had coal mines going down to something like 800, 900, 1200 feet as the deeper seams were developed as the years went on. And Larkhall and district, if we look at the Larkhall and district in the first place, we're not just talking about the town of Larkhall as it exists today. The Larkhall coalfield extended from Eddlewood at Hamilton and out to Netherburn and Auchenheath, meeting what was the Lesmahago coalfield. This area has been developed over the last 200 years or so, and it started out with the small tramways and the wagonways, especially in the Avon valleys, the Gander Water, which is near Stonehouse, and it joins the Avon just slightly to the south of Stonehouse, and also towards the River Nethen, which, in my opinion, has one of the most interesting layouts for a coal mine I think I have seen. To understand something of coal mines, we have to have an idea the difference between an actual coal pit and a coal mine. Craignethan Vale Colliery is one of the most interesting sites that I have visited over the years. Two gentlemen sitting by the banks of the Nethen near Craignethan Castle decided to set up a wee fire to cook the fish that they had poached from the Nethen. And they discovered in 1818 that the coal that they were burning burned to a very, very fine ash and left very little residue behind. Thus, the Lesmahago main gas coals of Auchenheath had been discovered. When they had taken the samples of coal to the district analyst in Glasgow, they discovered that this was one of the finest seams of coal and types of coal that they had come across. For many, many years, right up to the early 1900s, the Lesmahago main gas coals, used in the gas industry for many years, was one of the highlights for the villages of Lesmahago, Auchenheath, Blackwood, Kitmuir Hill, and yes, to the outskirts of Larkhall itself. This particular colliery, Craignethan Vale, took something like only 2 years to develop from various ways. They went straight into the site of the Craignethan Crags near Craignethan Castle. They didn't have to dig a shaft, they went straight in off the water's edge right in to the side of the hill where they started to develop the coal, and they would go in so far that they would then find themselves going up ladders to other seams slightly further ahead and further up. A lot of other coal mines were being developed in this way at that particular time, in the early 1800s, especially where the Cander water meets the River Avon near Stonehouse, where many old shafts and what we call day levels or drift mines still exist to this very day. Ironstone was discovered round about the same time as the Lesmahago main gas coals, and also in the areas around about Coatbridge and Coatness and Wishaw, the iron industry, making pig iron and later steel, came into being. And there was a bit of a gold rush for Larkhall and district to mine for the various types of ironstone that existed, especially in the Stonehouse and Larkhall Millqueue areas. And while that was taking place, they discovered that the best way of actually stoking the furnaces to melt the iron, they also discovered at Craignethan Vale and round about a lovely dross coal, which was absolutely ideal for the processes that they used in the iron making, especially in the early years. Near Crossford, between Netherburn and Ashgill, and looking down the Clyde Valley along to Rosebank, along to Crossford, there are two coal mines down there, known as Orchard Number 1 and Orchard Number 2. in the Cozy Glen area of Crossford. We know for certain that these two extensive drift mines are linked to the Annabella pits near Netherburn. If you were to go and visit the Annabella pit site today, you would discover that the railway, the horse-drawn tramway, is very, very easily seen. It was stone-based with a beautiful, what we call Type 1 material and stones, compacted almost as like a Roman road, where the rails were laid and the horse-drawn wagons were taken along for dispatch down onto the Clyde Valley Road, and the coal itself was carted off to Glasgow along very, very poor rutted roads. And of course that took a very, very long time for the coal to go from where it was being mined and to go to the marketplaces in Glasgow and beyond. The railway companies, of course, a lot of them came along and they took over from the canal companies, who thought that they had the right to rule in getting the transport of coal from A to B. And a very good example of that is that the Monkland Canal at Coatbridge was due to be extended to Wishaw and out to Campus Nethin. That particular bit of the canal network didn't come about because it was then being discovered that railways could do the job much, much quicker. And while the railways themselves were being developed in the Coatbridge area in the 1820s, 1830s, the Kirkintilloch to Coatbridge line was one of the earliest. But it wasn't until 1847 that the newly formed Lesmahago Guarantee Railway Company, wanting to build a railway from Motherwell out to Fernigare, present-day Larkhall, and over to Auchenheath, Rockets Brae, and a little extension over to Coburn to take out 70 million tonnes of coal in the Lesmahago Coburn area. The coal itself would be different types of coal for different uses. But the beauty for the Lesmahago Guarantee Railway Company, that they were guaranteed huge profits, getting the black diamonds of coal from the Lesmahago district, Larkhall, and getting it across to Motherwell, and then being distributed to the various iron companies, such as Coatness Iron and New Mains, and the various ironworks of Coatbridge, Calderbank, and the areas round about there. The development of the coal field then followed, especially from 1855 onwards. But one thing that we have to consider here is that the coal field itself could only be extended and grow as the railway developments came into the district. We had Motherwell linking Larkhall, linking Netherburn, with an extension going out to Stonehouse and eventually Straven. Straven had its own railway from Flemington, which was just to the south of Straven, down through Quarter and into Hamilton. That really was developed by Dixon. the coal master from Glasgow to ensure that he had coal being delivered to his works in Govan, also supported by his Govan collieries. From 1855 onwards, Larkhall as a mining town really took off. We had Fernigare, a colliery opened there in 1859. We had Summerlee opening in 1855. Summerlee, or Dykehead, was its name. It was owned by the Summerlee Iron Company of Coatbridge, and it was one of many pits that the coal masters and the iron masters working together ensured supplies of all the materials. Skeleton, also known as a station pit, had been a very small coal mine, certainly working from the 1760s, and it was extended in 1856 and certainly produced high quality coal until the 1940s. The railways extending all the way up to Broccoli, or, to give it its other name, the Coburn and District. It produced a whole lot of other coals to be used in the steaming of ships. They had household coal and coal again used in the iron industry. With the development of these industries, we had the development, of course, with the iron industry itself, especially in our area. We had Castle Hill at Carluke. We had the iron industries of Wishaw, Motherwell, Coatbridge, and all of these companies that owned the ironworks had to have guaranteed supplies of various types of coal to work away at their industries. One thing you discover with the larger pits in the Larkhall district is that the coal mines themselves were owned by the ironworks. Summerlee Iron, for example, had 2 or 3 pits in the area. In Dykehead, we've mentioned that already. It produced the very supplies that they needed for their Coatbridge works. But Coatness Iron also were involved with a whole lot of coal mines in the area. Even the Muirkirk Iron Company had its interest in Craignethenville colliery, that it was guaranteed the coal, the dross coal and the various other coals that they could get to keep the iron works going. Lanarkshire industry had 299 coal mines at its peak, and by the 1980s, Bedley Colliery was the last one, or was it? Cardown, they insist over at Cardown that they have the right to say that they were the last mine. One was 1982, one was 1983. You can take your pick. Thereafter, the coal industry as we understand it ceased. With it, the iron industry also died, and a whole lot of heavy industry in Lanarkshire died with it. A lot of the coal field was exhausted, and certainly by the 1960s in the Larkhall district, most of the coal was worked out. And it can be argued by some that there's still a lot of coal in the ground. But what would we use coal for nowadays? It certainly had its uses in days gone by. The coal is still there. Whether it's worth working or not is another story.
Well, I hope
tonight that I've given you an idea of one or two of the aspects that make Larkhall the town that it is today. It's still very much a working class town, but it's a town with a lot of history, and it has in its people an awful lot of rough diamonds. When you talk about the rough diamonds, the diamonds that we're talking about are coal, and also when you look at Larkhall from the air, it is itself shaped like a diamond. Thank you.